First morning on our trip for this year, we're camped on a section of what looks like to be the old telegraph line. Behind us is the remains of the old town of Woodlines, and you can see some remains of the old telegraph line with these insulators that are on the ground. In the area behind me, over that way, there's evidence of people having lived here, small concrete pads and a few old bottles lurking around. I got up this morning about 5:30 and the temperature then was around about 4.5 degrees and it was still pretty dark. The sun never came up until about 6:15. So this is where the interesting part starts. We're now scouting around for where the old Woodlines track crosses this road. It's not clearly visible as we're driving past, so we've got to get out on foot and just see if we can find something of the old formation, and then we'll know where we are. So I think I found the actual formation. It's really not very clear, just a slight raise in the surrounding ground. Yep, this is definitely it. Just to prove that we're on the roller line, Skinny has found a nut and a washer used, or bolt and a washer used to hold the fish plates together.
Broken one.
And look, one dog spike
And a nut.
Oh,
that's really broken. Look at that.
After camping one night on the way to the Woodlines, we eventually find the track we have been looking for. This time I am careful to make sure that the freewheeling hubs are locked to prevent another embarrassing bogging situation like we had last time. And not a moment too soon. I took the track that went straight forward, which proved to be very soft. After watching me, Steve and Paul took a slightly different route to reduce the chance of their getting bogged. We continued onwards, not expecting the troubles we would face shortly.
Immediately in front of the ocker, there are a lot of trees down, but there is a side track and we're not sure whether it crosses back through the scrub. This seems to be an area where there might have been a bushfire here through a couple of years ago. If that's the case, there'll be a lot of damage up ahead.
These trees have all been burnt down by a very large bushfire that raged through this area for some weeks in early 2019.
Still on the old track, so are all these trees. Right, we got to a section of the track we were following and there are heaps and heaps of trees that are down the track that were caused by a bushfire. There is another track that we've just walked down, or I've just walked down. The problem with it is it's sort of not heading in exactly the right direction, but it's also a fire break. And what they were doing when the bushfire went through was cutting on the edge of the bushfire zone, or tracking on the edge of the bushfire zone, and then leaving this stuff that's unburnt. The problem with that is that while it might start heading off in the direction we need, there's no guarantee that it actually meets back up onto the track we want, and that's a problem because it could end up miles away from where we need to be. So I think our best bet is to head down the track we were just clearing, see how far we can get and just keep clearing. There's only another 3 k's to go before we get to camp, but 3 k's with 100 trees down on it's a bit of a problem. The other thing I've always been concerned with the old Woodlines is that all the relics that are out here can be quite easily damaged by a bushfire, and in 2019 there were heaps of bushfires out here and they did a lot of damage, and some of them burnt all the way from near Lake Johnston all the way to Hyden, and whatever was out there is destroyed or gone or damaged. We've been clearing the track for at least 2 kilometres for 2 hours now, and there's still heaps to go. Stephen's about 500 metres up in front cutting trees, which is going to drive the cars up.
This is all regrowth. It will take many decades before the bush returns to normal, if it ever does. We are still travelling on the old rail route, and it is interesting to note this area was once cleared of all large trees by the woodline cutters. It took nearly 60 years to recover, but it really never looked the same. Using the drone allows us to check what lays before us, and it also proves we are still following the old railway track. Luckily for us, the way forward does not look too bad. We had already spent 4 hours clearing fallen trees over roughly 2 kilometres of the track. But the work does not stop. There are still some trees blocking our way forward. We always try to stick to the track where possible to avoid making side tracks. We should also note that only dead trees are being removed. At last we can creep slowly forward. However, it was not long before we hit impenetrable regrowth. We decided to make camp and explore here first.
Well, we pulled up tonight. It's our first camp on the Woodlines. We didn't actually get to the site we were chasing. That bushfire has completely destroyed the bush, and there's so much regrowth you can't drive through it anymore. But we've pulled up a couple hundred metres back from where we got to, and there are a few remnants here which I'm going to fossicking around for and have a look. Triangular tin. According to our research, down that way, probably another 500-600 metres, is a camp called the 48 Mile, and then, well, obviously a few miles past that is another one called the 52 Mile, I think it is. They're supposed to be pretty big camps, and they would have been the main camps for a period of time. And we are not the first people through here. Someone's driven through here some time ago. And old Holbrook sauce bottle.
Holbrooks and Lee and Perrin sauces were used to mask the flavour of bad meat. When you think about it, this stuff is just rubbish the woodliners discarded.
We've come from that direction, which is towards the north, and on the eastern side this has all been burnt out. A lot of regrowth in there, but it's very hard to push through, and if there's anything in that area it's probably all been burnt. The one thing we have noticed on this section of rower line is an unusual number of dog spikes and bolts. Normally they seem to have been picked up previously and used in other places as they move the tracks, but this lot here have just been left behind, and often it looks to me, rather than undoing the bolts on the fish plates, they just crack them off with a cold chisel and pull them out and just discard them. I'll swing around, you should be able to see the old rower line formation going straight ahead, straight through that dense regrowth. Remnants of bolts and dog spikes. According to my GPS coordinates, in that direction over there is somewhere where the main camp is supposed to be. These marks here, or depressions, are where the sleepers used to lie. One of the bush foods you'll find out here are quongdongs. I always have trouble telling the quongdongs from the sandalwood trees because it's the same species or family, but the way I've developed is to look at the seeds. If the seeds have got all these dimples in them like a brain, they're quongdongs. If they're smooth, they're sandalwood. And this quongdong tree has got fruit on it, just starting to come out. When they're green, they're not ripe, but when they go nice and red, especially if they had a good wet season, they're actually relatively juicy. If they're not juicy, very, very dry, and it sucks all the moisture out of your face when you eat them. I like them, but no one else I know does. Just over there was some, looks like earthworks for the formation. It's a lot of sand that's been dug and laid onto the formation of the roller line, because there's a depression that goes down over there, and to make the track level they've moved all the sand. A few tin cans in this area, and I would suggest that people were camped here for a short period of time. And there's a mound of dirt just here, which is different to the rest of it over there, and if I give it a bit of a kick, there's evidence of a fire, or at least where the ashes of a campfire have been placed. Here's another campfire or ash pit. That is possibly an old dray track. You can see there's 1, 2 and 3 depressions in the ground. Little ones for the horses, and the 2 outer ones are where the wheels of the dray went. And it comes through here and disappears. Walking on the old roller line, trying to find our first camp, and the burnt out area is pretty extensive and it's making it hard to get through. Just walking through a railway cutting now. They've cut these to make the gradient a bit easier for the locos to get up a small hill. And you can see it in the aerial photo from the drone. We've just found an area walking through the bush where there are a lot of dog spikes on the ground, a lot more than you'd expect. And here there is a track here, and there's one just over there, so I think this is where a set of points were, which indicates there was a passing track, and that usually indicates where a campsite was. So we're going to have a quick look around. I've also found a piece of glass which looks like it's come from a lens. Fish plates.
Maybe there was 2 tracks there. And
could have been.
One curved over that way.
Well, it could have been 3 tracks. Oh, it could have been turned off. I don't know. Couldn't see it on the maps, but there's definitely a second track here.
Yeah, that's the one we were following.
The third one was over there, but I can't see there was a tin can over there. Tobacco tin, it would have been washed from up there. That was a bit of rubber line. West Australian Railways. That's what it was called before, West Australian Government Railway.
Definitely looks bent.
Bent, all right. Could also be part of the points.
Could have been a lever.
No, but this could have been part that went through the rail, and it's pulled.
Oh, yeah.
You know, through the actual rail that moves. Old thermos. Oh, I found a bottle with a cork in it. This bottle is the property of Passett and Johnson Limited, Sydney. Still with a cork in it. And the contents are just sand.
Definitely found a beer bottle. Don't know what that is. It's a lever of some kind, or clip.
Spring loaded, or?
Well, it might have been, but definitely
Maybe not now.
not now.
More water tank.
I think we should come back on the bikes and see what's further ahead of this.
There's another camp. It's a very short distance away.
This is the end of part 1. From the air you can see the track continues on for some distance. We did not find the 48-mile camp. At this point, Paul wanted to get the motorbikes and come back, but we had already walked nearly 2 kilometres, and the 50-mile camp was only 2 more miles away, which is 3 kilometres. We decided to walk on, and this is the point where our decision might prove to be the wrong one. So keep a lookout for part 2 to see what we find.